Right now, 3 months after the school shooting we all said would change everything, is it the same old when it comes to Washington? As a somewhat watered-down gun control bill moves through the Senate, we're going to focus in on the policies up for the debate and the politics dragging it all down. And next, Obamacare, it turns 3. And as we wait for the bulk of the law to take effect, we take stock. What changes has health reform really brought? And is it healing or hurting the nation? And later, maybe the mayor should consider banning this. What's it really like on stage at the annual Inner Circle Roast? We're going to find out from one of Saturday night's performers sitting right on the set, as well as an attendee. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us this Monday evening, March 25th, 6 o'clock. Now, we begin with the push for sensible gun safety laws. The public, in poll after poll after poll, says it wants some pretty common sense changes to the gun laws. But more and more, it seems that Washington may be forgetting the lessons learned inside Sandy Hook Elementary back on December 14th. It has been just 101 days now since that tragedy that shook our nation, and Newtown is far from the only gun tragedy we've had to cover since then. Now, by the count of Slate magazine, there have been nearly 3,000 such tragedies since Newtown on American soil. Far more Americans killed by gun violence since Newtown than have been Americans killed in the entire Afghanistan war. Now, a gun bill is moving forward in the Senate, but nobody, not even the most ardent supporters of the legislation, are celebrating. Instead, they're asking, where is the rest of it? I want to bring in a senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman, who joins us for more.
Well, Rich, right now there is one man in the center of the national debate on guns and gun control. It's Democratic Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Senate committees have advanced a series of gun safety measures, but Reid has done the math and doesn't think they can all pass. So he's moving some items forward and leaving other items to essentially fend for themselves. Here's the latest. In the bill, beefed up background checks, the details still being worked out in hopes of avoiding a Republican-led filibuster. This despite nearly 90% support from voters on background checks. Also in the Reid bill, stronger gun anti-trafficking laws and a section designed to enhance school safety. But the real story may be what's not in the bill. A ban on assault weapons? It's not in the bill. This despite a recent poll showing 57% support for an assault weapons ban. A ban on extended ammo clips? Not in the Reid bill. That has 65% support in the latest poll from American voters. And provisions providing greater mental health support, they're not in the bill either. Reid says all of these items can and will get votes in the Senate at some point, but none seem likely to pass, so they weren't included in the big guns bill likely to come to the floor of the Senate in the next couple of weeks. Rich?
All right, Andrew, thank you very much. And for a Capitol Insider's view of what's happening and what's not happening when it comes to guns, I spoke earlier with the head of the GCCC, the group tasked with getting more Democrats elected to Congress and power in the House, Long Island Congressman Steve Israel. A few months ago, if I told you that we were going to finally get a vote here in terms of a gun legislation, gun reform, an assault weapons ban wouldn't even be in the package, and there's going to be a big fight here to have universal background checks, would you have thought that's the reality of Washington today, or did you think we'd be farther along than we are?
I would have thought we'd be further along. I would have thought that Newtown would have changed everything. You know, we keep on experiencing these tragedies, whether it's a school in Connecticut or a movie theater in Colorado or a university in Virginia. And we keep on saying that these are teachable moments and we'll get it right. And then we very quickly forget the lessons that we were taught and we get it wrong. And while I'm hopeful that we'll pass something that will help reduce gun violence in this country, it's just not going to be enough unless it is comprehensive and unless it really gets at the root of the problem.
You're in a leadership position in the House, and you can count votes better than I can, but here's what I don't understand. Usually when there's a poll that 90% of Americans agree on, and that's a universal background check, and even the assault weapons ban, 3 in 5 Americans agree they'd like to see it in place, it shouldn't be such a tough road to hoe, yet it's like fingers crossed here that we'll get some form of a background check. What's wrong here with the math that I'm not getting? Why is it so hard, for crying out loud, even on a background check, to get the thing through.
The NRA is not out of touch. Not only is it out of touch with America, it's out of touch with its own membership. A majority of NRA members support universal background checks. A majority of NRA members don't believe that you need 100 rounds in a magazine. And yet the NRA spends almost unlimited amounts of money trying to convince people that sensible gun violence prevention is akin to taking away people's firearms. I support the Second Amendment, but I also support responsible gun ownership. If you need 100 rounds in a magazine as a hunter, I question your skill as a hunter. And yet the NRA continues to manufacture this sense that this is a Second Amendment issue. It is not a Second Amendment issue. People have the right to bear arms, but they have a responsibility to bear those arms responsibly.
You know, Congressman, I've banged on Wayne LaPierre. I've gone after Republican leadership that pushed this canard that somehow you got background checks or databases, they're going to come for your guns. But I'm sorry, Harry Reid here, where was he on this, in that we can't even get it included in the bill because he says he can't round up enough votes, which it seems includes one of his own. We were promised, and even LaPierre blessed the Republicans to have an up or down vote on this. We have to have this now as an amendment, the assault weapons ban. Democrats, I think, deserve a little bit of heat on this in the Senate.
You're right. One of the smartest things we could do in this country over on the Senate side is to have filibuster reform, because the fact of the matter is there are 51 votes to pass comprehensive gun violence prevention. Those votes are there. They're there on the Democratic side, but all it takes is one Republican senator who's saying that they'll filibuster this forever. And nobody wants to see a filibuster forever. So, we need to clean out the system. We need fundamental reform in our government so that we could tackle these issues. And at the very least, give people a vote. There will be a vote on universal background checks in the Senate, and there will be a vote on an assault weapons ban in an amendment. Now, in the House side, the leadership of the House of Representatives has a fundamental obligation to let members of Congress, no matter what their ideology may be, vote. Let them vote for it, let them vote against it, but make them vote so that we can be accountable to the people who we represent. And if the leadership of the House of Representatives tries to hide behind the Senate or hide behind the filibuster and say that they won't even allow a vote on these important elements of gun violence prevention, then they should be held accountable for that.
You got an idea, Congressman? I know you were involved in this last election cycle, and you did a good job in terms of getting from your party more people into those positions. But something's wrong with the optics here, where you've got the police, you've got the military, you've got the visuals of the Newtown families that break your heart every time you see them. They're all in support for this. Yet you got to have Michael Bloomberg write a check out of his own pocket for $12 million to try and advance the issue. Has this thing not been marketed the right way to the American public? Somehow, some way, 100+ days after these shootings, we're almost in the same place we were before.
You know, Richard, who would have ever thought that the question would be whether this is being marketed effectively after what happened in Connecticut? I mean, what kind of marketing do you need when you see the headlines in the funerals that you saw in Newtown, Connecticut, and the headlines in the funerals that you saw from a movie theater in Colorado, and the headlines in the funerals that you saw from a massacre at Virginia Tech? This shouldn't be about marketing. This should be about doing what is right and that what most of the Americans want us to do. And so I think what has to happen is we have to get away from this kind of top-down where the NRA decides what's good for America, where one guy named Wayne LaPierre decides what's good for America, or on the other side, where my friend Michael Bloomberg is trying to develop messaging. This has to be grassroots. We need the American people to simply say enough. Enough of this insanity. Let these members of Congress take a vote. We will hold them accountable for a vote. But, my Republican friends keep saying that, we should listen to America. They should listen to America. Pass background checks universally. Pass a limit on how many rounds can be in a magazine. Pass those common sense gun violence prevention efforts that most Americans support, and we'll be a better country for it.
Finally, Congressman, you optimistic we're going to get something meaningful? And I ask that because we're going to have a vote in April on this thing, and it seems that the window of the American attention and pressure, it's come and gone. That 5-week rule, if you don't do it in 5 weeks, the public will move on to something else. You have any reason for optimism? What you thought would have happened will.
Yeah, look, I'm fundamentally optimistic that my colleagues are going to listen to the people they represent. And you know, it all boils down to this, Richard. What we saw in Connecticut, we saw teachers and administrators and adults showing the supreme courage of shielding children from bullets. And I hope that more of my colleagues will show a little bit of political courage in doing the right thing to prevent future tragedies like this. If they are willing to show that political courage and protect and defend the children that they represent, then I will be more optimistic.
Well, let's hope. Congressman, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard.